The New York Mets on Thursday night traded David Robertson to the Marlins for 2 prospects. According to MLB.com, they're 18th and 21 ranked prospects. We'll get into a debate about whether or not that's what they're actually ranked, but what we do know is that the Mets are selling, and that is not something you expected to hear when we started this season.
Yeah, I mean, a move, obviously, going through the season, the expectations of the Mets have changed drastically. There's been a lot of ups, a lot of downs. 6 games off the All-Star break, people are saying they're back. A lot of ebbs and flows, and that's, I feel like, how the Mets seasons have been going for the last couple years. But the main issue, again, very new to baseball, but from what I have gleaned in my very recent exposure to the sport, trading within your own division just seems like an absolute just rolling over and not even trying to salvage a season that, hey, I know it's July, but it's also only July. And, you know, a hot streak is a hot streak, and it happens in baseball all the time. So I really think it might have been too early to pull the plug, which is what it seems like it did. White flag, the phrase white flag is all over Mets Twitter. So that's my take. It's the in the own division is kind of the cherry on top of the garbage sundae.
Yeah, I think it's always, there's no sell, right? There's no selling your fan base on this. This is a process that sports teams undergo pretty shamefully, the teardown. You have seen a Mets response to this already. Sell some tickets. They are bringing in a pitcher who had 1 good season with the New York Mets, but is famous for hitting a home run or 2. And they're retiring him as a Met. Whole big ceremony. Bartolo Colon, huge ceremony. They are giving away to the first fans in attendance. And this isn't like a crappy college gym t-shirt, bad fabric. No, they're giving away nice long sleeve shirts with big sexy all over them. I mean, talk about relievers. This is a PR save if I've ever seen one. It's not good, boys. What's going on? And you look at it from the perspective of the Mets front office. The train has crashed and burned like already. You're not putting on the brakes. The brakes didn't work. There were no brakes. You can't, get Spider-Man to go in front of the train and stop. We're in reality, right? This is real life. I know we're talking about Queens, right? But no Spider-Man today, folks. This is very real for the Mets. They've got Vientos and Beatty, who arguably cannot do their jobs as position players at a league average level on a day-to-day basis, game-to-game basis. And they kind of have had those guys in game-winning or game-saving, potential game-losing spots all season long. It feels like one of the games I beat reported, Mets were down and Brett Beatty comes up with 2 outs and they're down 3-1 to save the whole game. It's like, this is the team you are. Is you're a team with high-end talent that isn't performing, like Scherzer and Verlander and Lindor and Alonso, and you're a team with not a lot of depth. A move like this is a step in the direction of a team like the Orioles, or you could even say the Dodgers if you want to extend further, in terms of staying all right, but refreshing the farm. Now, if you're a Mets player, to get your closer traded, no bueno. We saw Max Scherzer talk about this with reporters. He has to have a conversation. I think the conversation should be with the mysterious man in the mirror who has a 4.5 ERA. Not sure where Max could find that guy, but I just think when you trade Robertson, who had a 2.05 ERA this year, it is the white flag. It's not just it is the sale.
You took the words from my
You
mouth.
are putting up the sale
bad guy.
of the biggest white flag. And I mean sale, SAIL sale,
Yeah.
not the fire sale that the Mets are doing. It just seems like in division, I'm going to excuse them for. Vargas, great prospect to get in return. They don't care who beats them. They don't care if it's the Yankees or if it's the Braves or if it's the Marlins or if it's the 1972 AL All-Stars. Like they don't care.
Great great bunch of guys, by the way.
They don't care who they lose to. They know they're losing. And so at that point, you want to give reps to guys like Mauricio, to guys like Vientos and Beatty. Here's my question. I'll flip it for you, Lou, and you can go into this yourself too. Can you argue, because I did, can you argue reasonably that Robertson was the one veteran they should have kept to have a legitimate functional closer, even if he's not their closer, a legitimate functional closer? I would have traded Canna, Pham, Scherzer, Verlander, Max, Cincinnati,
Sure.
Justin, Baltimore, or maybe the Giants would be interested in Scherzer or Verlander. I just think I would have sold all the other veterans before Robertson because he is actually, and he's doing it by necessity because of the Diaz injury, he fills such a big role.
I think it's an immaculate point. I think the only player that would have been a bigger white flag and a bigger look into the window of the Mets' mindset would have been if they trade Verlander because he's got another year on that contract. Of all the guys that you can trade, if you trade David Robertson, it's a clear sign that you don't think you can win this season. Because as you said, you're taking the one bright spot in a piece of in a area of massive weakness for the Mets, right? The bullpen is a massive issue. It's been a massive issue for years. It wasn't as much of an issue last year because you had the best closer in all of baseball, Edwin Diaz. You were set to have a solid bullpen, even with Diaz healthy. I don't know that I was fully bought in on it. I think you see why, right? There's not a ton of depth there. But when you had David Robertson as your closer, guy was lights out. You trade him, you give up on any hope of winning this season. I'm right with you. You could have traded Canna, Pham, even Max Scherzer, and had still a legitimate shot and had fans legitimately believe we're still pushing for the playoffs, but we're trying to get as much back as we possibly can.
And you can't tell me they're not concerned about the Mets fan base right now because they're pulling Bartolo Colon out of the filler episode folder and doing reruns of that now.
And it's a great
because
rerun.
the main show is so bad.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing the worst episodes of the spinoff for the fan base, because that's better than what you've got going on right now, you're in trouble. You need to go look at the rest of this roster, and you need to get your eBay, your whatever mindset. You're gonna get what you can for those guys. You're gonna get what you can, because when it comes down to someone like Pham, if you want to trade Robertson, you almost have to trade Pham too. Expiring, overproducing the contract, you should cash in on it. You cashed in on it in your position of need. Buck Showalter, already a mediocre manager of a bullpen. I don't think he does not deserve the excuse of Edwin being gone last minute. I also just think with what he's had, he hasn't been great this season at managing the bullpen specifically. If you take the one guy who was the stopgap in all hell breaking loose for the Mets bullpen, and you deal him for players that the Mets fan base won't see until 2 presidential terms from now, then I don't think that you have the right to look at a Pham and be like, well, he's a big part of what we do here at the program. What you do here at the program is lose.
Yeah.
Go do more of it so it can at least be productive.
I mean, this is what happens when you enter the month of July 10 games below 500, that even though they've had an overall positive July, it doesn't matter because you're still 7 games back of 500 and you're still 7.5 out of a wild card spot. And you watch that team and you go, yeah, I don't think they can make the playoffs this year. Let's just get as much back as we can. Now, I think the big thing is, what are they going to do with Verlander? Because we've seen in the last 5 years or so, 2 New York rebuilds, one in baseball, one in hockey, that were expedited fairly quickly and ended up working out, right? The first one is the Yankees, right? They sell off their relievers in 2016. They trade Beltran. They let the kids play. And in 2017, Judge has what should have been an MVP season, and they make it to Game 7 of the ALCS. And you have the Rangers who send out a letter. We're going to rebuild. We're going to trade pieces. They trade Buchnevich. They trade a lot of their big guys, Zuccarello. At the first chance possible, they go out and they sign Artemi Panarin, and all of a sudden the Rangers are contenders again. I'm curious with the Mets because I still think, right, you're in a weird window. I think you said it to me, like, the window kind of doesn't exist. It's
no
hard to
window.
specify the window, but you have Alonso in his prime. You signed Lindor to a big contract that he's in his prime. And you have Senga, who 27 is basically in his prime. And then you have that weird zone of the young kids, Alvarez, the Beattys, the Vientoses, Mauricio, who's in AAA. Yeah. There's a weird disconnect between those two groupings. If the Mets believe they can make a run at things next year, you keep Verlander, you trade everyone that contract expires this year, so that means Scherzer, Pham, Canha, all that. And then you go out and you try and make splashes in free agency, maybe make trades at the offseason, and you try and make a run at next year. If they trade Verlander, they don't believe that, and they're going to rebuild for a couple of years. And that's the big thing.
I don't know if I agree.
Really?
I don't know if I agree, and here's why. When you see, I hate these. It's tough with analogies because you don't want to commodify players as assets, but unfortunately, this is the trade deadline, and this is what the GMs get paid to do is to unfortunately separate the human from the production and the contract. If you sell your Xbox 360,
I would never,
because it's running down. It's not the same anymore. Casey Powell lacrosse just isn't running as smooth on that baby anymore. That's a deep cut right there.
Do you have pinball on your Xbox?
That's like the 6 p.m. in New York of this take right now. That's a deep cut. Anyway, basically,
I'm not going to recover from that statement.
You have your 360. You sell it. You get back like 80% of what you initially paid, and then you save up more money, and you go, and once you have enough money for the one, you go get the one, right? And this is a rebuild in a team. You've reached levels, right? The thing is, the Mets are the kid that is trying to sell their 360 to a friend at school for more than it's worth, with the red ring of death on it. And they're also super rich. And they're going to go home and buy a Wii U and a Switch and a Xbox Series X and a PS5 just because they can. Mm-hmm. This is a situation where the team is not facing your typical constraints that you face in MLB. Yep. This is a team that's facing a problem of having bad players. They have all the resources to get good ones. The people they hired to make that happen aren't good at making that happen.
I mean, they also just might be cursed. Like, everyone was on game for signing Scherzer and Verlander. Verlander was coming off a Cy Young. Scherzer was dealing, even though they were old.
I had a lot of friends who told me I was a moron and that they were going to stink by the middle of the
season. Like the Lindor contract, I don't think it looks
that's worth
crazy
it to this day.
Great.
Worth it to this day.
I mean, listen, he's a great shortstop, but the problem with the Mets, I think, becomes their offensive construction. Lindor can't be your second best hitter. Well, he's a fantastic player. He can't be your second best hitter.
You're in those games you used to play as a kid with the big like umbrella beach ball
I'm
waving.
Not familiar.
Yeah, you guys have no idea.
I didn't have a child. I'm sorry.
You wave it.
The parachute.
You go under it.
The parachute.
Oh, okay.
Umbrella beach.
I never played it, but I know what you're referring to.
The Mets have like an anchor in the middle of their parachute. They're not lifting that up. That's not.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Because they're not saving that one.
You're saying the contract isn't a problem, and it's only not a problem.
Well, it's not a problem for the Mets.
For the Mets,
right. That's the thing.
That's why
you get what you can. This is what I was saying earlier. You get what you can. You talk to San Francisco. You say, "Hey, you like pitching?
Pitching.
We got Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. You want one of those two guys? Here,
someone
God bless.
should.
Hey,
even
Cincinnati,
Scherzer, right?
We got one left.
Someone should take a chance on Scherzer. This is the lowest his value's ever been. That you have a chance to get a Hall of Famer.
And
like someone's going to go for that.
He's on pace for the most homers ever. Yeah, but if you look at his last third of starts of the season,
a team can talk themselves into it.
It's getting in the
anchor's
direction.
coming up a little bit.
The parachute's getting some momentum. Come on.
So, that's the thing, though, is the Mets are in a situation right now where they need to become like used car salesmen and just like, hey, as like the bumper falls off, like this thing's a beaut, like I think they need to get what they can. Why? Because they can turn around this offseason and just go buy more. It's not a problem of, we recuperated $34 million on the Scherzer deal, and so as a result of this, we'll have the financial flex. Just open the wallet, right? Like Steve Cohen, like he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Mm-hmm. He doesn't.
He doesn't.
And that is, in basketball, a really big deal when you have owners who don't care, because in the uncapped areas of the league, like coaching and analytics and scouting, you can spend out the wazoo. Baseball, it's like everything can be spent out the wazoo if the owner cares to. This owner seems to care to, almost to a point where he has deals like Marte's were borderline irresponsible. I'm Dominican. That's one of my favorite baseball players of all time. That contract is better off, being in the KBO today than for the Mets. What is he doing? He steals bases Nice.
He's a good athlete.
If he can even
He's
get
fun.
there, if he
He's a
can
fun guy.
get to first.
I'm not gonna lie. I liked the signing when it first happened.
Yeah,
was
but
good
he's
last year.
batting like 0.84
I
now. I mean, like, I can't tell you. It's not. It's irresponsible. Can you imagine
I can. I have a good
this
imagination.
conversation right now if they went through with Correa? And us talking about Correa and Marte and Scherzer and Verlander.
It'd be
and,
bad.
And Lindor and everyone on this team underperforming that's old and overpaid. There is an issue with the Mets that's beyond, and this is what I'm talking about with the parachute. Everyone's being pulled down right now. No matter what side of that parachute you're on, waving that bad boy, trying to get some movement, some gust
Love it.
going.
Yep.
There's nothing. And you can all try. You have Lindor have a good week. Pete has a good week. And then Senga and who else? Beatty have a great day. And no matter what, everyone is weighed down. Buck looks worse than he did last year as a manager. People
They're a
would
lot.
say
They're a
he's
lot more
declined as a
fundamentally
manager.
unsound this year. It's surprising.
I would say Buck's the exact same. Buck is the most known quantity in maybe all the sports leagues.
I like Buck a lot.
Buck, Thibodeau. You got guys, Tom Thibodeau, Buck Showalter. Some of these guys are just known quantities and known
You
commodities.
know what you're getting. Yeah.
I don't think Buck is some fundamentally different manager from last year. I think the whole team doesn't care to win. I think these guys are playing for themselves, for their next deal. Everyone on the Mets is playing right now to show that they're not the problem. Instead of working together to eradicate what the problem may be, to find what it may be, it's all, well, it's not me. Oh, well, it's not me. What the media is saying about the New York Giants locker room, that's going on in the Mets locker room right now, actually. Like, seriously.
Here's what I'll say in closing, as unfortunately I have to wrap up this segment, is you have to play the kids. Because the one thing I look back on with that 2016 Yankees after they traded everybody is what did they do? They called up Gary Sanchez. They called up Aaron Judge. They called up Tyler Austin. Tyler Austin didn't end up panning out, but you gave all those guys a chance to struggle and get consistent playing time for 2 months. And I'll tell you, Aaron Judge looked awful in his first 2 months of his MLB career in 2016. I remember when
Productive losing.
I found out that he was going to be on the roster in 2017.
Productive
I was like, why? Like, we don't need another big guy that's just going to strike out and not do anything. And he should have been the MVP. So call up Mauricio. Play Vientos, even if it's ugly. It was ugly in the Subway Series, right?
Lose
but
with purpose.
It's important for them to get those reps. Like,
Lose with direction.
Right.
Lose productively.